Audrey Arbeeny. Thanks so much for joining us on Fuse Calls.
Thank you for having me, Dan.
Sure thing, sure thing. You're the founder and the CEO, I might want to call you, of Audiobrain.
Yes.
Can you briefly give us some background on what Audiobrain does? Like,
Uh,
when did
Audiobrain, Audiobrain is a high-level sonic branding consultancy. We are leaders in sonic branding throughout the world, and we help brands find their sonic identity. So if you think of what you would apply to a visual identity or a brand identity, we do that with music, sound, and voice. And sonic branding is the art and science of articulating the strategic and creative sound of a brand for consistency, for awareness, for differentiation, and to express something that people can feel emotionally about the brands.
So I mean, I know you're a musician, you have a music background. What got you interested in sonic branding as opposed to just sticking with music?
Oh, I have always been interested for some strange reason in sonic branding for almost as long as I can remember. I mean, I started studying music when I was 3. I started studying piano, but music for me always had a very visceral effect. I would feel things emotionally when I heard certain songs, even as a little kid. My dreams would have music in them. And I always felt very strongly that music was a very powerful thing. When I would practice piano, I would feel the emotion of the piece that I was playing, and it would move me. And as I got a little bit older, I always knew I wanted to do something in music. I started flute when I was 8, voice at Carnegie Hall when I was 17 maybe. And then I started my rock band. But all in the back of my mind of all of it was that I would do something with music.
Yeah.
At a certain point in time, I really, truly thought that was going to be a music therapist. And I worked on a summer program where I worked with kids that were deaf and blind. They were in a state institution in a very weak environment.
Wow.
So I would work with them, and I would do music therapy through vibration. So I put their feet on speakers and play music. And then I would track when they went back to the ward, and maybe they didn't punch themselves in the head that night. Maybe they sat still long enough that they could learn to feed themselves with a play card. So the power of music and sound has always been phenomenally important to me when it was used properly. And I've always studied a lot of psychology, and I've always been really aware. So as I went down my various rock star, editing, musical paths, working at a production company, I kind of naturally fell into it. I can't explain it, but I gravitated towards projects that were not commercials. I was fortunate enough to work someplace that was starting a division that was called the Sound Identities, special projects, and they turned out to be product sonifications, network IDs, and branding. And that was right in line with everything where my skill sets of my understanding of music, my understanding of psychology, my understanding of branding from having worked with creating sound for so many different companies, all kind of came together. But that was a very small subset of what they did. And so 16 years ago, I started Audiobrain because I wanted it to be really formidable in validating something that's so subjective to people that you can measure it, that you do research, that you do strategy, that you do find a way and create methodologies so that we are grounded in validity for a brand. When we create a sound and that sound becomes iconic, there is a lot of research, strategy, science, collaboration with the client, marketing, product design, that all comes together to go into it. So it's a very, very specific discipline, but it's something that kind of aligns with my variety of interests, and particularly what's our mission statement, which is that we embrace and we advocate for the power of music and sound to create well-being. And that's in a business sense and in a personal sense.
And it seems that the decision you made, the path you took has done very well for you. I see that we have two friends joining us behind you. Can you?
Where? Oh. I thought they were friends, like people were coming in my office.
No, I'm talking about your awards there. Can you talk a little bit about those?
About these awards?
Yeah, where did you win them?
These awards, stay with me. These are near and dear to my heart, as all our awards are. But these are 2 Emmy awards for our work on with NBC Olympics, who we've collaborated now as music supervisors on for 9 Olympics.
Wow. 2
of which we won Emmy awards for. One was the Beijing Olympics, and the other was the London Olympics in 2012.
So great.
If you want to talk about an amazing collaboration, a brand that is steeped in history.
Yeah, of course.
NBC Olympics is the best storytelling, and our role is to make sure that we help as a resource to provide sometimes non-musical people, sometimes editors who have something in mind, but to provide the narratives for these stories that are the NBC Olympic brand.
So Audiobrain, are you guys the primary resource of sound for the Olympics? Meaning, where would we hear Audiobrain sounds if we were
for the Olympics? We work with our team. We run 24/7 music resources, and we do work with NBC's music team. We have a great collaboration with they have an in-house music team, but people come to us with their stories. I'm doing a feature on this.
Okay.
And we need to know what's the music of that culture. How do we tell this? Help them tell this story in a meaningful way. We provide options. We provide the narratives. We look at the footage with them. We work with the people that work directly for the network, and together we take care of all of the musical needs for the producers during the broadcast.
So there might be a kind of a story about, I don't know, an ice skater from Bulgaria went through a rough time, and here she is at the Olympics, and they might ask Audiobrain to kind of, here's the narrative, here's what it's going to look like on NBC. Can you help us bring it to life with sound? Yeah?
Yes. Fantastic. And it's fascinating because, like I said, we've done 9 Olympic broadcasts. That's a lot of years of collaboration, and platforms have changed, and the speed at which we turn things around have changed, and everything streams live. But the story, the heart and the soul of the story is the same.
Yeah. And
that's what we may put it on different vehicles now. They're as forward thinking as you can imagine. And yet the story at the heart of it is why people watch.
Sure.
And we've been fortunate enough to be part of this evolution and be on this path with this fantastic team that we've worked with for so long.
That's so great. I mean, and that's such an integral part of our lives. Like just the Olympics, most Americans, the Olympics are on, everybody's watching. So what an opportunity. And I think what you're saying is absolutely true. There's something very, I was going to ask you about visual branding versus sonic branding, but as you know, I played a little music myself, and music is physiological. You feel it. When we were talking visual branding, I was talking to Debbie Millman the other day, and she called branding manufactured meaning. which I found to be very interesting. I never heard of it called that before. But from a visual design perspective, when we talk about the difference between aesthetic design and brand, we start to talk about the psychology.
Right.
You mentioned a bit of the psychology, in your intro here.
Right.
I want to break down some of these terms. I was researching you guys a bit. Psychoacoustics versus biomusicology. Can you give us a quick summary of those?
I will give you the most basic layman's difference and nuance. Psychoacoustics is more about how humans perceive sound, how we respond to it. It's more like the psychology side of sound. Biomusicology is more the biological side of sound. So when you say that you feel something when you play music, your brain might be processing sound in a certain way, how your brain operates when it hears sounds, how you physically respond could be a crossover between the two.
Right. So like a punk rock show where people are getting aggressive, let's say in the audience, or maybe some of these harder rap shows or something, as opposed to I'm going to sit back, chill, and listen to some beautiful classical music.
Right. So if you listen in the Port Authority, right?
Yeah.
So the Port Authority often has classical music playing because a study was done, I believe, by the London Underground, that by playing classical music, crime rate dropped.
Yeah.
So there you have two different things going on. It's probably more, to my opinion, the psychoacoustic side.
Yeah.
Because you're shaping the perception of what classical music brings, but it's also having a calming effect on your brain.
Right.
And therefore, the perception is more of a refined behavior. And so one is affecting the other. So we do have psychoacoustics, we do have biomusicology. I would need about 3 days to go in depth with it. But yeah. I always simply say to people, one is more about perception, like the psychology of the sound, and the other is more like the science, the biological.
Right. There is overlap with the visual because I know, I'm dating myself, but back in art school, we were talking about the psychology of color, and similar to what you're describing, if you notice at night, street lights in the city, they have a pinkish tone.
Right.
And they've shown that pinkish tone tends to be a calming factor just on the brain, and they've seen that crime rates reduce.
Right, and that's really interesting. And I know today we're talking about sonic branding, but all of our senses are intertwined.
Right.
So one thing, which I'll talk about later on if we talk about what we're doing at Fuse, one thing can tremendously affect the other. So color can affect sound, and sound can affect a visual, and a smell can certainly affect prompt memory. Their sensory branding, I know right now we're the hot button. So sound, voice first, sound first, extremely hot topic right now. But there are other senses, and everything is starting to come into its own light, no pun on what you were talking about.
Right.
But we live in such a sensory-centric world right now that they're all beginning to take shape together. And if you think of how far we've come from when it was all about visual branding, I can remember long enough, because I've been doing this over 20 years, been doing it when people were just starting to talk about branding as a methodology, as a practice. And sonic branding was just a jingle or a sound logo. And that's pretty much it. that was what people thought sound branding was, sonic branding.
Right.
You hear it called sonic branding, sound branding, audio branding. They all pretty much reference the same thing.
So when I'm curious, like, do businesses generally approach you? I mean, one of the things you're talking about, visual versus other sensory. I mean, would you say the rise for people looking to, say, sonic branding is a result from, arguably, we're just so inundated with visual stimulus. I mean, literally visual branding, especially here in New York City. I know you're in New York as well as I am.
Yeah.
You walk around, and I mean, how many ads do you see in one day if you're walking outside? Like magazines and posters and subway cars and taxi. I mean, it's just visual, 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 visual. Now with digital, do you think that's what's kind of causing this increase for the sonic branding as a need?
That there's an overload of visual stimuli?
Yeah, so people are kind of moving to other senses. I'm thinking, curious.
I don't necessarily, I can only speak for myself, and then I'll speak to the expert part.
Okay.
For myself, being born in New York, I don't see all that stuff. Like, I literally am somewhat immune to all the visual stimulation around me. When somebody else comes into New York, they're just like overloaded with visual stimulation. It's just part of my life, so it kind of blends in. I think that sonic branding is not new. I think what's making it so relevant right now is the number of increased places that it needs to go, where we have emerging technologies. Yeah. We have products like Amazon Alexa, Google Assistant. We have tons of voice branding. We have to do localization for voices around the world for different things. We have a lot of products that have sounds. We have products we did for Whirlpool that have sounds carefully crafted. We did sounds for Toshiba for their self-service kiosk, System 7, because they wanted a better customer experience. I think the customer experience and the transparencies of brands now, and the enormous number of touch points from podcasts like this to smart appliances, smart homes, chat bots, augmented reality, virtual reality, you name it, they all have a sonic component. Then get into the technology like eyes-free. I'm driving. Right. I only have my ears, to getting into something like medical devices, where you're doing something robotic where the surgeon's eyes are fully occupied on something else, and they need to know something else is happening. You need auditory signals for these things. So I think the fact that we are so technologically connected, and many of these technologies are not allowing for visual real estate, or they have to have sound. Yeah. You're asking a question. It's giving you back a voice. You have to communicate with products. You're communicating with customers. You're so entwined in technology. That's one of the things I think is probably near to the top of my list. And the second is the shift in the paradigm from a brand putting themselves out there to the consumer. Yeah. Customer is in the driver's seat. So you need to attract them, bring them to you, respect the experiences they want, understand the experiences they expect. Because if they don't get it from you, they're going to get it from somebody else. And if you sound disconnected, you don't sound like what you're putting your brand forth to be. Right. Your advertising sounds different than your events. That sounds different. Yep. If it's all over the place, they're hearing all these things now. they're connected. They're going to your pop-up stores. They're going to your events. Then they go into your website. Then they're going on, looking at you on doing a live performance on SiriusXM or whatever, so they can hear when it doesn't sound authentic, when it doesn't seem maligned. So I think the two parts for me are the tremendous emerging technologies that need sound and customer experience, and enabling you to tell your brand story is imperative, because if they don't get you and care about you and have an emotional connection, they'll move on to the brands that do.
So, and I going from that, when we're talking about one of the things I'm asking all of the folks this year that I'm speaking with is having a dialogue with business leadership. So
right.
When you're talking about that emotional connection, you're talking about products having to differentiate. Sonic branding clearly plays a role in this, and I can start to see this more and more. When you're speaking with business leaders about sonic branding, how do you create dialogue with people in those positions that may not totally understand what it is that you do?
There's two approaches that I like to take. First thing is three, I'll say. Three.
Okay.
One is to start them off with a simple game. And I often do this in presentations. I did a master class yesterday at Pratt. I start them off. What is this sound? And I just go down a board. And they just shout out what the sound is.
I think you've played that game with me, actually.
Oh, did I? We played that game. It gets them in a comfort place.
Yeah.
It gets them on that first level that they're most accustomed to, which is a sonic logo.
And so just for people listening, the game is you would hit a sound and people would know, oh, that's what recognizable brand. It's
that's Nokia. That's right. Intel. That's the Mac startup. That's we have a variety of them, and then we show them. You play HBO, they know it's HBO.
Yeah,
exactly. Immediately they're shouting these things out. So now, then you show them what the brands are, and now they at least have some doorway in.
Yeah. Okay. So that's a sonic fingerprint, what you're describing?
No, that's a sonic logo.
That's a sonic. I was going to ask you, what's the difference between a sonic logo and a sonic fingerprint?
Well, when a lot of what Audiobrain does, and we've done this for a very long time, we are long-time leaders in this industry. There's a lot of companies out there now, but we've done this for a really long time. And in crafting a sonic identity, crafting a sonic logo, we came upon a few projects where we needed, in a split second, to communicate the sound of that brand. So I'll give you an example of a sound logo and a sonic fingerprint.
Okay.
So when we created the sonic branding for the Xbox 360, okay, we worked with the brand team. We worked with the product design team. It was a fantastic project because all the key decision makers were at the table and were involved from day one, when the product wasn't even finished being designed.
Yeah. When
we were an equal seat at the table as everything was being thought through.
Great.
Okay. So for the Xbox 360, there's when it boots up, as everybody knows, that now iconic Xbox 360 boot up sound. However, quite often they will be co-branded, and they will come at like the end of an EA Sports ad, and you get that
right,
that breath. All you get is that half a second of that Xbox breath. That's the fingerprint of the Xbox Sonic logo. Sonic fingerprint is that breath. that in a split second you have something, that element within the sound logo, that's the fingerprint, that most ownable element that we can put in the smallest of real estate, launch an app. Sometimes people sometimes people can't hear a really long sound, a really big sound, and the space is getting smaller and smaller and smaller. So whenever we develop a sonic logo, now we will develop a certain appropriate length. We'll develop sometimes, like the Xbox 360, the boot up is like 10 seconds long. Then there's the sound logo. And then there's the fingerprint. And now with every brand that we do a sound logo for, we like to also do a sonic fingerprint. So you could launch an app. It could go in co-branded environments. There's so much co-branding going on right now that you could say, I'm in here too. Or you have a brand that has many sub-brands, right?
Yeah.
So you have these big companies and they have many different brands underneath them. But the overarching brand wants to say, and it's part of us. So you have something like GlaxoSmithKline may have Panadol, and they may have Tums, and they may have Polident, and they may have whatever. But now on all of them, not till recent years, but now they want to connect them as GSK. You'll hear that GSK slight tone at the end of each of those individual ads.
So that, as I'm listening to you talk, what's coming to mind, you remember the three tones of NBC and the peacock?
I think I know the NBC chimes
yeah.
extremely well.
I don't know why I'm thinking of this as I'm talking to you, but it's a childhood memory, and I remember the peacock coming on the television. Would that be?
And then Disney. I think Disney came on after that, but I'm not sure if they were on 2 or 4.
I don't know.
I don't remember.
I mean, that's kind of early. Well, not early days, but it's certainly a decent amount of time from today. Those three tones. That seems to be the fingerprint, but it would be part of something bigger. So I don't know if that would be, or maybe it's neither.
I think it's a sonic logo. I think it's a sonic logo. It's a
sonic logo. It would need to be a portion of something longer or bigger in order to be the fingerprint, right?
I don't know what I would take a fingerprint out of those chimes because they're pretty short to begin with.
It's very minimal, yeah. It's like this, I don't know, just talking to you, this kind of came out of my childhood, so I figured I'd just ask you.
It used to have, at certain times, they would add another tone to it during war times.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, and that has really been around, and it was originally a longer form too. But during war times, I believe they had an extra tone in there when they were on radio.
Have to do some research on that.
Yeah, I'll send you I'll send you the document on that, which refers to that extra. Oh,
great! Yeah, and I'll post it online when we.
If I can find it.
All right. So,
if my memory is serving me.
Since we're talking about history, I know we've had discussions about the Bauhaus. This year's the 100th anniversary of the Bauhaus. I know Audiobrain has been working towards evolving yet again the Fuse sound for 2019. Can you share any insights from the work you've done for this year's Fuse? Yes, I can. So since 2011, we've worked with Fuse. And as you know, we recently went back over we did a full sonic branding exercise. Yeah. And what Fuse is about. It's premium. It's extraordinary. Yeah. Brilliant minds. It's communal. Right. And it also is kind of, I don't want to use cliche, but like cutting edge, advanced. And it was interesting to sit down
with your team, you and Julie, and that filter hasn't changed. So you see, the audio DNA is so authentic, but we evolve it for each year. So the year when it was about magical, we have a brand theme, we have executive walk-ons, we curate popular music playlists specifically for the Fuse audience. So what we would play for the Fuse conference, we might not play for something else. It's selected through the lens of premium and community and extraordinary, and the types of sounds, whether they're created by us. We have a brand theme, and every year we evolve it. So this year we've evolved it to suit the theme of this year's conference. So we have a blend of Bauhaus, and since it's in Chicago, we're adding elements of Chicago blues.
Yeah. And
combining the two, because the conference this year is about unity, and it's going to be an extremely interesting sound.
I'm really looking forward to hearing this.
And it will go, and also throughout the conference there will be curated music that's hand selected, that's played. There will be different sonic experiences that go on. But you guys done it for many years, and we are creating them as room warming soundtracks. I just want to take 1 second to talk about this.
Sure.
When we do our process, which is a discovery, competitive analysis, which has changed over the years, what we do within our discovery is different than what we did 15 years ago. What we do within our strategy now is different than what we did 15 years ago. But our process is discovery, strategy, creative, and all. So once we have the attributes that make this, we don't care about the table stakes. We don't care that a bank tells us that they're secure. Well, you should be secure if you're a bank.
Right.
We try to find that unique spot, that ownable spot. And that Fuse filter that we just discussed is your ownable territory. And what we do is we then create many assets that support that. Video opens and closes. Room warming soundtracks. So underutilized. Our clients love them. Because when you have people walk into a room that either has music played by the AV guy that's not appropriate,
right,
for the audience it's playing for, then you're not going to have people feel this branded event. But when you have a room warming soundtrack that's on brand, and it just holds together, it sets the table, it creates that emotional, physical experience that you were talking about. These will play throughout the conference. When the people walk to the stage, the speakers do a keynote. It's to a branded sound. Yeah. Because we had a top executive for one of the top brands in the world that we were doing a lot of sonic branding for, walk to a big event and walk to the AV guy playing Yellow Submarine. And right. The whole audience laughed.
Yeah.
He came off the stage. We were doing other things for the event for them. He said to me, "Can you please create a sound for our brand that's based on everything that we've been working on, but and you could create a few of them, but that are on brand,
right,
in the sound lens that we've created for our executives to walk to the stage, so it feels and sounds like our brand, and no one has to be embarrassed like I just was." And that's how we came upon doing executive walk-ons. All the brands we work with now have executive walk-ons. And now they don't just have one. Each executive has an executive walk-on that's a blend, not each. Some have one executive walk-on, two executive walk-ons for the whole brand. But we have brands that each executive has the brand executive walk-on with their personality infused in it.
Wow.
So that's how deep this could go. I mean, it's amazing when we map out how many places a brand is heard and places that people don't think about. So if you're a really cool, sexy brand and someone calls your call center and gets what sounds like, someone that just woke up and is a chain smoker, that's not going to bode well to your perception of being this cool, sexy brand. So we do a ton of voice branding, ton of voice casting, more so now than ever. And we have high criteria for that. So there's so many places like the room warming soundtracks, like the executive walk-ons, like the voices and voice announcements, and any place that you're using sound is an opportunity to reinforce the emotional side of your brand.
It just seems like there's so much opportunity for what you do. I mean, especially listening to you talk about this. Yeah, I'm not familiar with a lot of sonic branding groups out there. Do you have a lot of competition, or is this kind of an underground thing, or?
That's a loaded question there.
I don't want you to list out your.
Okay, well,
but
if you ask me, I don't think we have competition.
Yeah.
Because I don't think other companies we have a certain skill set that is equal parts high-end composition with in-house composers. That's very important to me. We have a lot of research, we have a lot of strategy, but we also have a lot of technical understanding at an extremely high level. So we can go from the first thought of what somebody wants to building hardware, software, and implementing on the biggest venues throughout the world. So that's a complete full circle. There's not a handoff.
Yeah.
And I think that there are companies out there that have been around for quite a while that I do respect. They may have different methodologies than me, which makes us not competitive to me, because they take a different approach. But there is a handful of them that I think are, we're friendly. We play in the same landscapes, but we don't all do it the same way, and we don't all have the same skill sets. I can only speak to us because I know our skill sets go full circle. Then you have a lot of companies now popping up a lot of different places as audio branding companies. And it's almost, to me, the equivalent of advertising agencies migrating over to branding agencies.
Okay.
Music production companies or musicians migrating over to audio branding, because that's what people want. And I don't necessarily know if they go through the whole hardcore research. I mean, delve and strategic planning and testing and implementing. And there are some that do, but the ones that do are pretty much the ones that have been around for quite a while, and there's very few of them. That's not to say people up and coming aren't going to be great to be in this industry.
Well, I have to say, firsthand experience, just talking to you, I've observed you really walk the talk. It just seems like, I don't know how many occasions you've been like, okay, I might say a few things, and then it's like, okay, Dan, but now we're gonna do what we do, and we'll come back at you. And I can definitely see that. And I can also see, so I'm very excited to hear what our sonic branding sounds like this year. And
so am I.
So are you. And what you're saying, for sure, I know that vibe from past conferences, and you guys have created that sound. And
Thank you.
Yeah, no, it's absolutely a huge part of the experience. Last question for you. You know, we're working with Project Osmosis, and I know you and Julie Annixter have been directly involved with them. Can you talk a little bit about what your strategy is for and how you're going to integrate and work with some of these kids from Chicago?
Well, as you know, my passion point and the whole reason for, if you're not doing something you're passionate about, you shouldn't be doing what you do. And music and sound, I'm incredibly passionate about because it makes people feel better. It makes things sound better. And we advocate for it to bring about well-being. So we often teach. I gave a master class at Pratt. I lecture at the Masters in Branding program. I mentor with a Masters in Branding program. We've donated all of the sonic branding for Cycle for Survival, which raises money for orphan cancers. We've done everything that we can for them. We've done virtual reality tours of the research facilities. We really care, and it's important for us because of who we, when you say walk the walk, that's part of it. When you have an opportunity to give back to the next generation, to enlighten them in something that they're not aware of. The students yesterday that I had yesterday at Pratt were like, I know that people do this, but I never thought that this existed.
Yeah.
And so we are so excited about working with Project Osmosis. And I'm sure your listeners are well aware of who they are. But what we're going to bring to them, and I literally had to choose who to bring with me because all of my composers wanted to come and do the workshop. And it's on a Sunday, so it's before Fuse. And we're excited because giving back and paying it forward is just everything for us. We'll get out of it as much as they will. But we're trying to focus it on design. We have a few things that we're building that they can hands-on work with crafting sounds.
Okay.
We'll show them some things where they'll be looking, not to give too much away, but how sound can change the perception of the imagery they're looking at.
Are we going to have video there? I hope we are.
We're supposed to be having the whole thing recorded.
Yeah, because I really can't wait to see all of this in action.
But for them, we're treating it quite the same as we do with the branding students that we work with, or the Tribeca film students that come in. That's another group that comes and we teach. We want them to take away that the sound that supports the design and art they work with is very, very special and important. And that when they go forth, that they're thinking about sound, that they understand how valuable it is, they've worked with it, and they can communicate about it. And we're excited to give back to Chicago. And we have one or two special surprises for them. Besides the Chicago Blues stuff that we're doing at the conference, we have one or two things for the students as well. But we want to surprise them.
Audrey, I think that's a great note to end the discussion with. I'm so excited, and just talking to you about it, it's getting me more excited. So I'm really looking forward to it all. And thanks so much. Thanks so much for taking the time to talk.
Thank you very much. And I will see you in Chicago.
All right. Sounds good.